Hello and welcome to the Leaders Council podcast with me, Joshua Jackson. This podcast is all about hearing from authentic leaders across the country, gaining an understanding of the mindset of the people that get up each day and make this country work. Today, I'm speaking with Karen Bowring, Managing Director of Professionals UK. Karen, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me back. Pleasure.
No, it's going to be a great conversation we're about to have. There's been quite a bit of time since the last appearance, and I'm sure a lot's changed, both within the business, personally, and obviously worldwide. But if you wouldn't mind, just start this off. Give a bit of background about yourself and the company.
Yes, so I am the Managing Director of Professionals UK. I started the company in 2005. I come from an English language background, having taught in the ESL sector since graduating myself, and been in the whole English language teaching industry for my whole life, really, from teacher to director of studies, school principal and marketing. And through that, I saw the value of international students who came to the UK to get internships with British companies, like some work experience for a limited period of time, and able to, really kind of spread that international vibe and improve their language. So I've been doing that since 2005 when I set up the agency. And it's been a long and interesting road with lots and lots of ups and downs, because we're very kind of governed by politics and international events, of which there have been quite a few in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. The international relations really has taken over, hasn't it? And, whilst you all might be looking at a very sort of, micro perspective, you're affected by all of those huge events that have been going on. But just for a little bit of clarification before we dive into that, what sort of age ranges are you working with?
Generally, a university-age student. So we do deal with a lot of sixth formers from various parts of the world. Mainly, they've historically been Europeans. But we're mainly looking at kind of 18 to 26 years. Yeah, about 18 to 28, that kind of age group.
And since you say, mainly Europeans, I'm assuming you're working worldwide as well?
Well, I mean, until Brexit, we were 80% European and 20% rest of the world. And since Brexit, it's flipped on its head. So it's 80% rest of the world, 20%, if that, of EU students. Yeah, it's been a real revolution that's happened in our whole industry, particularly in our niche sector of the industry.
That is quite the turnaround. You don't expect it to go completely from one side of the other quite so quickly, but obviously, given as we say that the worldwide events, Brexit, COVID, travel restrictions, visa issues, of which we're going to speak about, but that is quite a change. And the last time you were on was in the midst of the COVID pandemic, the COVID lockdowns, the travel restrictions, the issues that were going on, which will obviously just come on the back of Brexit and all of that confusion as well, some of which has now been dealt with, some of which most definitely hasn't. But last time you were on, you were talking about having about 90% cancellations of students coming over and fulfilling the programs and the placements. Have you managed to bounce back from that?
Yes, I'd say we have bounced back, but we're not as big as we were in pre-COVID times. I mean, we were really kind of flying in education industry was really, really flying, especially with the English language schools. Obviously, that domino effect of COVID and those bookings just disintegrating, it kind of meant we had to put on furlough or let go of 70% of our staff. So we became a kind of skeleton operation, and we became extremely agile, very pivotal. And what we did initially was we represented our industry body, which is English UK, to become gateway providers for the government Kickstart programme. Now, that was, alas, because I look back at it with it was an amazing program, actually, really amazing. And it could have gone on longer, or it may be adapted in different ways, but it was it was a vertical learning curve, because the government was making it up as they went along. Like the DWP department within government in which it operated, they were recruiting people as fast as possible to get the scheme off the ground. And to their credit, they did it well, but the teething problems were extremely painful for anyone who was involved in, like us, being a gateway provider. So how it worked was, if you're a large company like Tesco's and you could take on 30 people and offer them a job, and these are like people who are hard to employ, age 16 to 24, just out of education or not in education, and they were not likely to get a job easily. So if Tesco's could take more than 30, that's great. They could be their own gateway. But for small companies, they needed an umbrella. And that's what we were for the English language business. And we took, we got 75 people into various schools and coaching them. And another 25 that we just coached without getting them in ourselves. And, also about 45 of them got into lasting positions where they were offered jobs. And it was very, very rewarding, even though it was extremely painful. Because we had to go through the kind of government mechanics, and they lost our application the first time around, and we had to do it all over again. It was like pages and pages of detailed data.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I'm not surprised by that. Sometimes the government bureaucracy can turn very slowly, and things do get lost. And you really did anticipate one of the things I was going to ask you about the Kickstart scheme, really, because many people said it was successful, but equally as many had issues with it. And one of the major issues was actually getting smaller employers on board. And I think that's something. Was that something that you found, obviously trying to get these placements? Was it the hesitancy, especially during this difficult period, of getting employers on board to have those placements? Or, what were the issues?
I think some of the issues we found was that it was a geographical difficulty. There were we had quite a lot of placements that were successful in, for example, the Leeds area, around Manchester, and kind of Brighton area also, where we had the right match of candidates for the type of placements offered, because we were really, really encouraged to provide, or try and get companies to provide a lot of new skills like social media marketing type of things. And I think small companies went for it with gusto. They really did. And they tried their best. And then they went through they had to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to be accredited, rightly so, because it's the taxpayers' money that is paying for this. But what we found was we had a lot of interest as well from London, and maybe there were too many providers, and there was just not enough candidates of the right caliber or type in the right location. So there was some huge gaps in areas of the country with companies offering a lot, but they just didn't have the candidates to put in them. So I think there was some groups in society that would, that just were excluded for very minor reasons. Yeah. It might be something like they've got one day of benefit in some way, shape, or form, and that excluded them from the whole 6-month program. Or something. It was often an insignificant detail that just meant a lot of young people kind of missed out on this opportunity. Whilst at the same time, I am aware that there is an awful lot of clawing back that's gone on, because inevitably when a government launches a big scheme like this, you get a lot of people, a lot of companies who might not be the most honest, trying to get away with things that they shouldn't, let's say.
Of course, and obviously we're hearing that just from getting bounce back loans, the fraud that was going on there, some of the issues on on furlough. But obviously this was a time of immense pressure, and if you're going to, you need to provide funding or opportunities, and not to let's say defend every aspect of it, but everybody wanted those things, and then it's only since things have calmed down that people look back and say, what, mistakes were made. And it is always going to be the case when you are doing these things wholesale and in so quickly.
Absolutely.
To react to the issues. So obviously that's all sort of ended now. What does today look like?
What does today look like?
Yes, for yourself and Professionals UK.
Well, I mean, we're just coming to the tail end of Kickstart because, we had quite a lot of coaching sessions with all the applicants, and the last starting date was March. So there's some going up to September where they're still getting kind of career coaching. And, this was an aspect of our company that we really developed and deepened because of the Kickstart program. So we just became experts in coaching young people in how to present themselves and, how to get, however meager their experience, we allowing them to kind of see who they actually were on paper in a way that they really felt they could talk about. And look, job applications are often really scary. You look at a job advertised in the paper or online, and inevitably a lot of companies use quite complex language, or they use, words like leveraging and all sorts of words like that people just don't understand quite what they mean. And they don't realize that, I've actually done that. And so people get, if I looked at my own job, my own job description on paper, I'd be scared to apply for it.
Yes, it's...
So what I mean. So, we really help the young people get really practical and understand what these words mean and say, look, you've actually done that. You can talk about that. So that was great. And we've brought that into what we do now. So whilst we've moved very much away from placing large numbers of European students coming through the Erasmus program, we now are more dealing with international students at UK universities, and we can now offer this extra layer of coaching and helping them to kind of really sell themselves to future companies, as well as getting them into industry placement. But I am very sad about the demise of the European market.
That's it's going to be something that's going to be ongoing whilst the EU and the UK just sort of fight out some of their issues, isn't it? And it's going to be a number of years. And actually, that brings me on to a recent debate that took place on July 19th at Westminster Hall. It was all about language schools and the issues that were going on, headed up by Dr. Rupa Huck, the MP for Ealing Central and Acton. And just to quote a few of the stats that were going on before I think we will go into this, but it was 2019 was obviously the sector's last normal year of trading. There were 550,000 students, half of them under 18, contributing 1.4 billion into the UK economy, supporting 35,000 jobs and underpinning the 20 billion across the education markets. And the British Educational Travel Association have said that between 2019 and 2022, the number of students groups coming from the EU dropped by 84%, which is matching your experiences. And those are huge numbers for a huge industry that, brought a lot to the UK, and actually then exported UK culture, UK language, UK abilities, and sort of education as well. What do you think the solution is here? Is there one?
Well, I mean, what you said, is exactly correct. And I think the solution lies in a time when I think our industry, English language teaching industry, within the private sector of the huge network of language schools throughout the UK, I think it's really misunderstood by central government. They're looking at the university market, which has done very well, and rightly so. But the private language sector is a real kind of feeding pipe into that. I mean, most people that study at UK universities have, at some stage, since they were probably about 12, come to the UK year after year after year after year for 10 years, more or less, with their school group. They've come from an EU country, for example, and they come with their class teacher, and they do 2 to 4 weeks in a seaside town, and they keep coming back year after year, and every time they come, another 40, 50,000 pounds every group is bringing into the local economy. Now, what it needs is an awareness of that, because I am a believer in shop local, and whilst Brexit is done, I would prefer to buy. If I was buying fruit, I'd prefer to buy it locally rather than have it exported from Australia. Because, whilst it's great to bring people from all over the world, I'm not going against that. It's also shop local is encouraged in every other sphere. And on our doorstep, we have got I can't remember how many countries are in Europe that do not speak English, but we have an incredible number of them on the doorstep who could come into the UK on the train. If it could expand rail routes, it would be amazing to do that. And they come in mass numbers, especially when they're in the sixth form equivalent of their schools. They come into kind of boarding school. They come in vast numbers. And this year, having opened up again, there's about 40% of pre-pandemic levels, because there is this closed mind of the idea of them letting them come in as they always did, using their ID cards. Because most of these people don't have a passport. If they don't need one whilst they stay in the EU area. And so if you go to a class teacher downtown in Barcelona and say, okay, we've got a school for your children to go over and improve their English, but if they go to Ireland, it'll cost you this much. They can go with their ID. If you go to Britain, it's going to cost you this much more, because if everyone's got to get a passport, and they'll go home to their parents and say, oh, I'm not sending Pedro there because it's just too expensive. And that's replicated across the millions and millions of people living in the EU. Whereas these people are not going to be absconded. They're not going to be disappearing into the UK economy as illegal immigrants. They're just children. They're children coming in and boosting the EU, boosting the UK economy massively. I mean, we are used to the pavements being blocked around in the area I live in Brighton by massive groups with their rucksacks. And this is, across Bournemouth, Eastbourne, Margate, Scarborough, all over the country.
And a lot of places that are generally starved of economy and rely on tourism and these sorts of programs.
The host families, the taxi companies, the social program companies, the coach companies. It's just a huge missed opportunity, really. And with that, they used to come and spend all their Erasmus money in Britain. So Britain is a magnet for Erasmus, and we've come out of that scheme, unfortunately. And there's a touring scheme, which is more for outbound. But we used to attract so much of the Erasmus money to be spent in the UK. And now a lot of these people are going to Ireland or Malta, who frankly are also suffering because the numbers are so huge that they can't provide the service at the quality they used to, because it's like having too many people in your shop trying to buy everything.
That's an interesting point as well, just because there's so many more people going to, smaller places or having a smaller choice of places to go, that everybody's suffering, not just England or the UK because of the choices that have been made and the hit on our own economy, but also the students, because they're not going to get the same experience and the same potential love for the culture, which then in 20 years can have a knock-on effect because people aren't prioritizing English, people aren't working within that language and understanding that culture. It's actually that I think that's probably going to be one of the more far-reaching points that I'm going to take from this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
continue to think about.
It's soft power.
Mm.
It's soft power. I mean, just this morning we got an email from a Spanish college that they managed to use some pre-COVID Erasmus funding, and hats off to him. The head of department, Juanjo, in Barcelona, he almost had a nervous breakdown getting through the British Council visa system in order to get his students over here. It was so stressful for him. But he's glad that he did, because they had an amazing experience with an art gallery design company in London. And their teacher in Barcelona has just praised the manager, David, and he's just said, please come and visit us in Barcelona. And that is just such a warm sentiment, because the rest of Europe is thinking of us like, oh, Britain, what are they doing? They're not feeling that warmth towards us at all. And that soft power is, a lot of EU countries, they love Britain. They loved coming here. And it's I don't know how long it's going to take to turn this back around, but I really hope they can, because, there's so much to be gained from just getting rid of kind of narrow vision, I would say. Narrow vision.
So if you had, let's turn to the hypothetical. If you had the opportunity to make one change, which was going to ease people coming to the UK, revitalise the language sector, what would it be? Would it be ease of collective passports? Would it be accepting of ID cards, which is one of the main sticking points? Would it be access to funding? Would it be a marketing campaign to say, we're open? Where would you go?
Well, the we're open has been, we have been saying it non-stop through the English language industry. And so that's kind of done. It would be this easing of the route in for the local market of multiple passports, multiple people on with IDs being allowed to come in, and just a small short-term visa allowance for them to be able to use their Erasmus funding here, because Erasmus funding is allowed to be used in an outside country, and we're now an outside country, but there's no route for them to get in to do it. So it's like saying, yes, you can go and visit that place, but there's no road that goes there.
Yep. So just easing that ability for people to get across the border, to come over here for X number of days, 180 days, 90 days, whichever, as there seems to be the current maximums, but, just making sure that the groups can come over easily and potentially streamline it. So let's try and get this message to everybody that was involved in the debates on the 19th, and, hopefully the Leaders' Council can help you push that, and get some conversations going on that road, especially with a new incoming government in September as well, which is a completely different topic of conversation we're not going to go down, but it can be an interesting message.
Well, it would be, and particularly if they are allowed to come and study. However, if they could do short-term working visas for 3 months, it would ease so much pressure as well on the hospitality industry. Because apart from doing like career internships that we provide, they could just get a bar job or something for 3 months, which is what always used to happen. And, that would really help the hotel industry and, casual work. Yeah,
bring back some of the seasonal hospitality elements that have always been going on and, should be available. But, I'd just like to sort of move on a little bit, if that's all right, because obviously part of this process is talking about leadership. And you had a really interesting conversation with Scott the last time you were on, talking about, trusting those around you, new hires, with getting on with their roles, giving them a bit of freedom, not just constantly micromanaging, but also your own ability to start the business that you started as well, taking risks, identifying that business plan and launching, and just sometimes just sort of going for it and believing in yourself. And the COVID period, the Brexit period, all of the issues that you've had over the past couple of years have brought on a whole new raft of changes for a lot of other companies. And do you think that you've changed in your individual style and the way that your business is running? Have you learned any lessons that you think you'd like to share this time?
Oh gosh, yes. I have changed enormously. I've never understood until this period of really doing what you can do now, because now is the pivotal moment. It's always the pivotal moment because we don't know what's going to happen next. So whilst there is some future planning, I live in the power of now, and so do the people who work with me. I had a business partner, Bella, and she still works with me, but she has now gone on to a new field and she works as a freelance. We've all become a little bit freer in some way and a little bit less hanging on and thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen, routine to everything. So everyone's kind of a little bit looser in what they do. And maybe that work-life balance has improved in that way. Everyone's working from home and everyone's become a little bit more adaptable, including all the companies I work with. Everyone's loosened all their rules of saying, oh, no, that can't happen, that can't happen. Everyone's kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm sure we can manage that. It's quite interesting, people have really, their minds have loosened because everything was turned on its head. And so we're all, I am like, well, yeah, maybe that'll work. Let's give it a go. We'll try it. And I'm noticing that my colleague up in York, another Karen who works with me, we're both just such a strong team. We just pick up each other's thread all the time. And we just go with the flow. I think the biggest message is I go with the flow much more because I know I have no power over world affairs. I just jump in and see where it takes me and just try to keep on with this kind of core belief I have of keeping international connections going.
And, from that, it just seems like you're still so passionate about the work and about the role and about the wider industry. And maybe this need for adaptability and these challenges that have come in from all sides has brought back the excitement. And that's always great as well, isn't it? Getting up each day, not really knowing what's going on and thinking, what, there might be a bit of chaos today, but I'll deal with it. And, it could be quite exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're looking now just to the future, the next 6 months, the next year, what have you got coming on?
Well, we've got a lot more connections with university students across the UK and kind of building up networks around all the major universities to get them placements for part of their course, which is really exciting. Working more with universities in the Northwest and Yorkshire as well as London ones. We've also, students coming to language schools are also able to, this is a great thing actually, they're able to volunteer for up to 30 days. Okay. So that is a good thing because anyone can do that. So we're kind of helping them to find volunteer placements as part of their cultural tour in Britain of the language. So many charities are a big thing in the UK. And so that is a very satisfying thing when you can get a charity benefiting from some young person from France doing some social media for them because, everyone wins. Yeah. And even though it's a short period, that's kind of a big program for us this year to help that happen. And to just keep going with the university side of things because that is a real kind of success story in the country that international student placements have really filled up in the university sector. So, and everyone wants some experience, especially if they're going to stay on the graduate visa. They want to be able to get a job. So we're part of that. Again, as I say, keeping Britain connected to the world and letting young people leave Britain with a really positive view of British industry. I see that as part of my role.
Well, that's, I think, a fantastic way to end this. That positivity on promoting Britain, promoting British culture, promoting English, but also then, as we've mentioned, just giving something back to the people that are coming over, expanding their horizons, throwing them into new, challenges where they'll pick up different life skills, different vocabulary as well, which is
Yep.
always great,
Yep.
and a wider understanding of what they're capable of, which is part of the points of doing these courses as well. But Karen, if people wanted to find you, if they wanted to learn more, where would they be going? Would they be going to a website, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn?
Yes, the best is on our website, professionals.uk.com. They can find us there, companies can find us there, and students can find us there. And hopefully we can help them match one to the other.
Brilliant. Well,
So, yeah.
Karen, thank you ever so much for coming back on to the show. It's been a really interesting conversation covering some old ground in new ways and new stuff that's been coming through the pipeline as well. So, I wish you all the best going forward. It'd be great to catch up again once some of these new plans and hopefully the changes have got easier.
Thank you, Joshua. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for asking me.
Thank you and goodbye.